As the CEO of Alaris Global, I am very optimistic about the new working model, because it is accelerating the next wave of globalization. This globalization process is faster, more efficient, fairer, and more widely distributed than all previous iterations combined. Our lives will be more closely connected. In the context of globalization, people of any nationality living in any country can collaborate and share resources and knowledge online. Alaris calls it Globalization 3.0. The greatest feature of previous waves of globalization has been the imbalance of power. Globalization 1.0 took place in the era of empire and colonialism. At that time, we saw colonists crossing national borders and time zones by land and sea, expanding territories and consolidating territories. Rome, Mongolia, Spain, Japan, and the British Empire occupied most of the world and profited from the labor and natural resources of the new colonies. This kind of globalization is entirely dependent on the conquest and exploitation of the absolute power of the state. Globalization 2.0 culminated in the recent turn of the century, in which international trade flows and the outsourcing movement of rich countries in developing markets contributed to this wave of globalization. In order to adapt to Globalization 2.0, monetary institutions such as the European Union, EU, regional government alliances such as the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and global organizations such as the World Trade Organization, WTO, have emerged as the times require. Globalization 2.0 has a broader impact, with governments working to reduce the cost and barriers to moving goods and capital around the world. What is Globalization 3.0? Now we are in the era of Globalization 3.0, and the new crown epidemic has greatly accelerated the process of globalization. Enterprises and talents are no longer restricted by geography, and anyone can work for any company anywhere. The internet has become a medium for online work, and knowledge and skills are continuously flowing around the world through the internet. People can be paid for their unique knowledge and skills, and protect the American workforce from automation. This wave of globalization will be fairer than the previous two as global commerce moves from financial centralization to democratization and decentralization. In this environment, salespeople in Michigan can work for entrepreneurs in Bangalore, India. Companies in Israel cross borders to work with salespeople in North Carolina. They list on the New York Stock Exchange. The company's Beijing, China office is building the future with second-generation Chinese immigrants settling in San Francisco. These people have not even met during the new crown epidemic, and have not even left home, but they have joined forces to create one business miracle after another. If people think it's strange for an American to work for a foreign employer, it only speaks to the fact that for a long time one's nationality was one's job opportunities. Alaris Global is working to change that. The preconceived notion that global work means Western Europeans and Americans outsource jobs to Asian and Latin American countries. These people see globalization as an opportunity for cost arbitrage so that the privileged can hire the less privileged. Alaris Global does not think so. With the future development of work in Global 3.0, nationality will no longer be an obstacle. Anyone can work for a company located anywhere in the world. As such, we open up to international labor markets and the global business world for more equitable, decentralized and diverse collaboration. Alaris Global connects top U.S. sales and business development talent with global employers. Talent working with Alaris can work anywhere in the United States for companies around the world. In the new world of work, people around the world are hiring Americans to help them expand into global markets. This overturns the traditional concept of globalization, where people used to think that Americans hired low-paid workers in other countries such as China or India. In the new era, people in countries such as China and India hired Americans with high salaries. At Alaris Global, we share a vision of people from all over the world working together for mutual benefit, collaboration, and equality. Global cooperation isn't just about rich countries outsourcing jobs to poor countries to cut costs, and it's not just about people living in the world's major cities. It is a vision that transcends physical boundaries, transcends routines, and connects people around the world. If you want to join Alaris Global's new vision of globalization, then you can get in touch with us through our website. The old driver has said many times before that the innovative use of unmanned boats by both sides in the Russia-Ukraine conflict shocked the West, but many technical difficulties need to be overcome for this. At the Abu Dhabi Defense Exhibition, which opened on the 20th and is known as the largest in the world, an unmanned boat exhibited by China has attracted the attention of military observers from various countries because of its strong military potential, it has already put Russia in the Ukrainian conflict. Those experiences included, or to be more precise, this Chinese unmanned boat has long accurately predicted the development trend of future naval warfare. After the Russian-Ukrainian conflict broke out, the outside world was surprised to find that it has been at the forefront of the world's naval development. The practice of naval warfare between Russia and Ukraine only proves the correctness of the development of Chinese unmanned boats. The U.S. Navy news website reported on the 20th that the A-45 unmanned boat released by China at the Abu Dhabi Defense Exhibition was docked at the pier of the exhibition, ready to perform. It is the first time in the world that the exhibition has a dynamic display of actual capabilities. Its main tasks are patrolling, surveillance, search and rescue, and transit around motherships, base stations, and islands. It can also be used to combat piracy, combat drug and weapon smuggling, and prevent illegal fishing. Chinese exhibitor Polytechnology said that the A-45 unmanned boat is 7.5 meters long, 2.6 meters wide, and has a displacement of 3.7 tons. Remote control, manual driving, and other driving modes. It has autonomy, obstacle avoidance, and swarming capabilities. Due to the aluminum alloy hull and stealth-shaped design of the boat, it is difficult to be detected by radar. Suicide unmanned boats used by the Ukrainian Army. Seeing these characteristics, those who pay attention to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine may immediately think of the two wonderful actions of Russia and Ukraine dispatching unmanned boats. In October 2022, the Ukrainian Navy used suicide unmanned boats and drones to launch a joint sea attack. It successfully broke into the Sevastopol military port where the Russian Black Sea Fleet is stationed. The West praised this as an innovative use of unmanned boats, a strategic bridge between Ukraine and Moldova. The main technical characteristics of the unmanned boats used by Russia and Ukraine in these two operations are very similar to those of the A-45 unmanned boats. In other words, the basic performance of the A-45 unmanned boats that China participated in this exhibition can fully meet the requirements of similar maritime raids. It is worth noting that the US Power website once emphasized that the most critical issue for unmanned boats to carry out such attacks is how to control the unmanned boats beyond the visual range. During raids, it may be necessary to have an operator nearby for remote control. Through the base station of the Abu Dhabi Convention and Exhibition Center, the unmanned boat operation in Zhuhai, China can be remotely controlled. At the Abu Dhabi Defense Exhibition, the Chinese unmanned boat company demonstrated a more technical solution to this problem. Exhibitors can control the unmanned boat far away in Zhuhai, China through the base station at the Convention and Exhibition Center in Abu Dhabi, select the target location to set the mission target, and the unmanned boat docked at the Zhuhai wharf in China can receive instructions in real time and plan the navigation route independently, go to the target place to perform tasks. On the base station screen of the Convention and Exhibition Center, the real-time voyage track of the unmanned boat, thousands of kilometers away, and the real-time pictures of the waters captured by the unmanned boat's camera are displayed. In other words, with the help of satellite data links, Chinese unmanned boats can be remotely controlled thousands of kilometers away, without the need for operators to risk staying near the attack site. According to reports, this is also the first time that unmanned equipment cross-border control experience has appeared on the scene of the defense exhibition. A 45 unmanned boat has a very wide range of application scenarios. What is even better than the Russian-Ukrainian suicide unmanned boat is that the Chinese unmanned boat has a very wide range of applications. In addition to performing basic tasks such as patrolling, it can also be equipped with photoelectric and radar systems, equipped with weapon loads such as machine guns and missile launchers, and become an integrated unmanned vessel for reconnaissance and attack. Strike missions can deny strikes to small and medium targets at sea and provide fire support for water troops. It is worth noting that another key issue of unmanned combat boats is swarm coordination technology, and China has also achieved remarkable results. This far exceeds the technical capabilities represented by the unmanned boats used in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. In 2018, Chinese unmanned boat enterprises successfully carried out a collaborative demonstration of 56 unmanned boat clusters, realizing the concentrated display of small unmanned boats simulating large surface targets and multi-formation autonomous transformation technology, setting a world record for the scale of unmanned boat clusters. The dynamic cooperative game technology for high-speed unmanned boats released at the Zhuhai Air Show in 2022 already disclosed the entire game process of 6 high-speed unmanned boats cooperatively enclosing, intercepting, and driving away unidentified maneuvering targets at sea, marking China's a major breakthrough has been made in the key technology of unmanned boat swarm coordination. Industry insiders also revealed that the establishment of unmanned equipment cross-border control experience at the exhibition site fully demonstrated the extremely high technical confidence of Chinese exhibitors. The superior remote control technical strength has broadened the combat radius of the unmanned boat, and the advanced unmanned boat cluster cooperative confrontation technology has excavated the tactical depth of the unmanned boat. In recent years, with technological breakthroughs in communication technology, sensor technology, target recognition, and image processing technology and other scientific and technological fields, China's unmanned boats have developed rapidly, and the results of systematic development may further promote the transformation of naval warfare in the new era. Compared with large warships costing hundreds of millions, unmanned boats with high cost performance and zero casualties have become an irreversible new development trend in future naval warfare. Abstract: the theory of the three types of trends in China's economy, developing people's wealth, reforming important factors, and opening up and focusing on institutions. The development of people's wealth should shift from focusing on the growth of national flow wealth, total GDP index, and the accumulation of stock wealth, total asset market value index, to the people's wealth model that focuses on everyone's development and life happiness. Now, it is especially necessary to make up for the shortcomings of residential consumption rate and promote the realization of common but differentiated universal prosperity. For factor-based reform, we must grasp the theory of responsiveness of factor civilization, the theory of neutral categories, and the theory of property rights, and steadily promote the market-oriented reform of the 7 elements in accordance with the 3 logics of reform: economic development and human development. Institutional opening up, on the basis of opening up in 5 streams, promote the opening up of systems, rules, and regulations, and solve the 5 outstanding institutional problems in the 3rd wave of opening up force reform. Promoting China's development and reform and opening up according to the above 3 types is a rational choice in line with the current world trend and its game. Keywords: 3-type trend, people's wealth-oriented development, factor-based reform, institutional opening up. China's economy is in the process of historic changes. Marked by the new journey to realize the country's 2nd centenary goal in 2022 to build a modern socialist country in an all-round way, China's economy has entered a new stage of development. In contemporary China, the economy in a complete sense includes 3 systems: economic development, economic reform, and economic opening. To adapt to the new stage of development, China's economy should also have 3 major trends, which are the development trend of people's wealth, the trend of factor-based reform, and the trend of institutional opening up. In short, development emphasizes people's wealth, reforms important factors, and opening up emphasizes systems. The author summarizes this as the theory of the 3 trends of the Chinese economy. 1. About the development of people's wealth. The United Nations Development Program, UNDP, proposes that the purpose of economic development is to meet and realize human development, that is, development should fall on people's wealth. The following is an in-depth analysis of the development of people's wealth from 3 aspects. 1. The object-based tendency of wealth accumulation in economic development needs to be transformed into a people's wealth type. 2022 is the first full year for China to embark on a new journey to realize a modernized country, and it is also the 2nd year, a critical year, of the 14th Five-Year Plan. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, in 2021, China's gross domestic product, GDP, will reach 114.367 trillion yuan. From the perspective of the wealth of the people, how much does each Chinese person have on average? How close is it to the threshold set by the World Bank for high-income countries? In early March 2022, when the National Bureau of Statistics released GDP data, the author converted it according to 1:6.5, that is, $1 is equivalent to 6.5 yuan, and 114.367 trillion yuan is equivalent to approximately $17 trillion. According to this calculation, the per capita GDP is 80,976 yuan, which is approximately equivalent to $12,467. If converted at the annual average exchange rate, it is $12,551, exceeding $12,000. In May 2022, due to the depreciation of the exchange rate between the RMB and the US dollar, based on the latest onshore price of RMB in May 2022 at 1:6.6, it is equivalent to approximately $12,269. If converted according to the FOB price of 1:6.64, it is $12,195. In March 2022, the People's Daily published an article saying that China's per capita GDP has exceeded $12,000 and it can be established. If measured by the above per capita GDP indicator, what kind of development node is China at now? In other words, how to position our country. According to the World Bank's 2021 standard of higher income countries must be higher than $12,695, it can be said that it is relatively close to the bottom line of high income countries, but it cannot be said that it has reached the standard of high income countries, let alone surpassed high income countries. Nation. Moreover, the income here does not refer to per capita income of residents, but to per capita GDP income. This should be clearly distinguished. What is mentioned above is the flow index, that is, the flow scale of 1 year's economic growth. We'll pay more attention to the stock index of assets, that is, after years of development, how much stock of assets has been accumulated, that is, the total amount of wealth. Here is a quote from the Global Wealth Research Report released on November 15, 2021 by McKinsey Global Institute, a relatively influential research institution in the world. According to the report, the global net assets, note the net assets, excluding liabilities, was $156 trillion in 2000, and by 2020, it has reached $514 trillion, which is equivalent to 3.28 times of the past. During the same period, how has China's wealth grown in the past 20 years? According to the report, China's wealth has soared from $7 trillion in 2000 to $120 trillion in 2020. Of course, other countries in the world also experienced growth to varying degrees during this period. For example, the net assets of the United States also more than doubled during this period, reaching $90 trillion. There are two factors worth noting here. First, the growth of GDP itself reflects a relatively strong momentum of wealth creation. Second, the asset stock indicators in the Global Wealth Research Report are calculated according to market value, and one of the important driving forces is the sharp rise in real estate prices is the increase in wealth stock driven by the appreciation of real estate. According to a McKinsey research report, the market value of real estate accounts for 68% of the total global net assets, which means that more than two-thirds of global wealth is stored in real estate. Judging from the development trend of global net asset value in the past 20 years, the growth rate of total wealth has exceeded the growth rate of GDP, or the growth of wealth stock has exceeded the growth of GDP flow. This is largely driven by lower interest rates pushing up real estate prices, while also raising questions about both wealth and perceptions of wealth. Question 1. Is this wealth and prosperity sustainable? Many scholars at home and abroad have raised questions about this issue, so there is no need to repeat it. Note. The author conducted a field survey in Hainan. Since 2021, the province's land transfer revenue has been on a downward trend. Is it sustainable under the constraints of limited resources? The second question is raised by the author from the perspective of humanistic economics. The topic of his thinking is where is the position of people in the aforementioned Global Wealth Research Report system? The author advocates that in the past, we should focus on the growth of national flow wealth, measured by the total GDP index, and the accumulation of stock wealth, measured by the asset market value index, and truly switch to the people's wealth that focuses on everyone's development and life happiness. In terms of the model, it is especially necessary to make up for the shortcomings of the humanized consumption rate of residents and promote the realization of common but differentiated universal prosperity. 2. Humanistic investigation. What is the consumption rate of Chinese residents? Marx and Engels said in the Communist Manifesto that the essence of the new society is to realize the free and all-round development of everyone, and the purpose of development is for people. Using the concept of humanistic economics to examine, what is the consumption rate of Chinese residents? The author believes that to study consumption under the new pattern, it is necessary to distinguish four rates of consumption, namely, growth rate of total retail sales of consumer goods, consumption growth rate, consumption contribution rate and final consumption rate, especially the resident consumption rate. The above four groups of rates each have their own connotations, directions, and functions, and should not be confused. But now it is generally confused, intentionally or unintentionally using the first, second, and third rates to cover up the problems and shortcomings of the fourth rate. Because according to the theoretical logic of the author's humanistic economics, the most worthy of attention should be the final consumption rate, especially the resident consumption rate, which is equivalent to the bullseye or 10 rings of the consumption problem. The final consumption rate refers to the proportion of final consumption in the total GDP. The author's human-oriented structure theory, 2015, concluded from a horizontal, international, comparative perspective, although the dynamic growth of China's residents' consumption level is not slow, China's final consumption rate, residents' consumption and government consumption, is low, not only lower than developed countries at a higher stage, but also behind some developing countries at the same stage. The reason for the low final consumption rate is mainly due to the fact that the consumption rate of residents directly related to residents' lives, that is, the bullseye or 10 rings of consumption issues, is too low, only 34.6% in 2012. 1.3. It is precisely based on the concern about the low consumption rate of residents that the author suggested in the book Human-Oriented Structure Theory. During the 13th five-year plan period and even a longer period, China should implement demand management, the new strategy of combining supply management and pull up the consumption rate of residents. Believes that this is the first issue of China's economic structural adjustment. 1.5. After the publication of Human-Oriented Structure Theory, the paper on the new strategies of combining demand management and supply management, 2016, based on this point of view advocated the combination of demand and supply and put demand first, and aroused controversy. Until 2021, the decision-makers clearly pointed out that it is necessary to strengthen demand-side management, expand residents' consumption, improve consumption levels, and make the construction of a super-large-scale domestic market a sustainable historical process. Demand-side management and its associated expansion of residents' consumption have attracted widespread attention. This is the reason why the author quoted this paragraph at the beginning of the paper: grasp the three new and distinguish the four rates and three lines to promote consumption upgrade. It has been nearly 10 years since the World Bank released the data of the World Development Indicators, WDI, database quoted in the book Theory of Human-Oriented Structure. What is the actual situation of the world's major countries and China? Please see the final consumption rate statistics table of some representative countries from 2012 to 2020 published by the World Bank. Table 1: Final consumption rates of representative countries, calculated in current US dollars. Source: World Bank database. From Table 1, we can see that China's final consumption rate released by the World Bank in 2020 is 54.82%. So, what is the consumption rate of residents? Table 2: Household consumption rates of representative countries, calculated in US dollars at current prices. Source: World Bank database. Table 2 shows the 2012 to 2020 resident consumption rate data of representative countries, among which the 2020 Chinese resident consumption rate is only 38.12%. Even if the author makes adjustments to add the public consumption directly used by residents in the government consumption rate in that year to form a wide caliber household consumption rate, it will only be around 45%. Note: for the specific demonstration process, please refer to Changzhou's Grasp the Three New Distinguishing the Four Rates and the third line to promote consumption upgrade on the expansion of residents' consumption in China's new development stage, published in Academia, Issue 4, 2022. In short, no matter whether it is 38.12% announced by the World Bank or around 45% adjusted by the author, both narrow caliber and wide caliber household consumption rates are the lowest in Table 2. So, how to really increase the consumption rate of residents? Here, the author once again reiterates the proposition in Theory of Human-Oriented Structure: in the new stage of development, increasing the consumption rate of residents is still the first issue in China's economic structural adjustment. This is a prominent problem that needs to be resolved in China's people's wealth-oriented development. 3. Seeking common prosperity, further discussion on common but differentiated universal prosperity. Another important issue in the development of people's wealth is the issue of common prosperity under the conditions of a market economy. First of all, it should be pointed out that common prosperity has been the common ideal of mankind, including the Chinese nation, for thousands of years. The world of great harmony described in the ancient Chinese classic book of Rites Liyun to the utopia proposed by Plato in ancient Greece based on fairness and justice as the criterion, mankind's expectations and ideals for common prosperity are entrusted. However, before socialist society, including utopian socialism, these ideals were unattainable. The establishment of the socialist economic system provides the institutional prerequisite for common prosperity. However, under the planned economic system before the reform of the Soviet Union and China, the implementation of left social and economic policies not only failed to achieve common prosperity, but actually led people to common poverty and common suffering. This is a lesson worth learning forever for mankind. After China has entered a new era of reform and opening up after 10 years of catastrophe, developing the economy and improving people's lives have become an urgent and practical issue. In this context, Deng Xiaoping pointed out at the closing ceremony of the CPC Central Committee Work Conference in December 1978, in terms of economic policy, I believe that some regions, some enterprises, and some workers and peasants should be allowed to earn more because of their hard work. Some people's lives will get better first. If some people's lives get better first, it will inevitably produce a great demonstration force, influence the neighbors, and drive people in other regions and other units to learn from them. In this way, the entire national economy will continue to grow. It will develop in a wave-like manner, so that people of all ethnic groups in the country can get rich relatively quickly. This is the first time Deng Xiaoping talked about the issue of getting rich first and getting rich later, although he did not explicitly use the term Commonwealth. In March 1985, at the National Science and Technology Work Conference, Deng Xiaoping explicitly used the term common prosperity for the first time. He pointed out, the purpose of socialism is to make the people of the whole country common prosperity, not polarization. Especially in the famous Southern Talk in early 1992, Deng Xiaoping put forward an important conclusion: the essence of socialism is to liberate productive forces, develop productive forces, eliminate exploitation, eliminate polarization, and ultimately achieve common prosperity. 4. After systematically analyzing Deng Xiaoping's exposition above, the author concludes 3 points. First, common prosperity was proposed by Deng Xiaoping from the deep structure of the essence of socialism. Second, the meaning of common prosperity was expressed by Deng Xiaoping by the method of exclusion, that is, it's not polarizing. However, he doesn't rule out legitimate differences. As for what the connotation is, it has not been fully explained, but it can be understood. Thirdly, Deng Xiaoping clearly pointed out that common prosperity is the ultimate goal of socialism, and socialism requires several generations, a dozen generations, or even dozens of generations. Man perseveres and strives hard. Over the years, people have not understood enough the meaning of the word final in the ultimate goal, so that the ultimate goal is simplified and short-term. The author believes that today's discussion of the issue of common prosperity under the conditions of a market economy is difficult to say that it is mature and finalized both in theory and in practice. The author agrees with this point of view. Common prosperity is a problem that has not been fully resolved. 5. Because the theory is not yet mature and finalized, a series of seminars on common prosperity were held before the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, and precisely because in practice, it has not yet matured and finalized, so the central government decided to take the lead in conducting local experiments and demonstrations in Xinjiang province. Coincidentally, at the beginning of 2022, when the author was interviewed on the high-quality development and promoting common prosperity demonstration zone, I discussed it with comrades in Zhejiang. In this interview, the author puts forward the viewpoint of common but differentiated universal prosperity. In this new concept, why both common prosperity and differences are mentioned. What is the purpose of mentioning this concept? Simply put, common but differentiated universal prosperity is designed to guard against both elite and populist tendencies. Here is a brief analysis from 4 aspects. Note. See Common Prosperity from the View of a Broad Development Pattern interview with famous economist Professor Chang Xiaos, published in the news edition of Zhejiang Daily on February 11, 2022. Xinhuanet, Swekiakyo, Fenghuang.com, and many other websites successively reproduced it. 1. Proceed from reality and face the 2 tendencies of excessive income and wealth disparity and absolute egalitarianism. This is the first dimension, the dimension of reality, for the 2 aspects of the excessive income and wealth gap and the signs of populism. These 2 aspects must be prevented, but the main problem is probably the large gap between income and wealth. The income of Chinese residents is mainly manifested in 3 aspects, namely between urban and rural areas, between regions, and between different groups. The former 2 are analyzed by income ratio. The ratio of per capita disposable income of urban and rural residents will be 2.50:1 in 2021. Between regions, the ratio of per capita disposable income of residents in the province with the highest resident income to that of the province with the lowest income will be 3.55:1 in 2020. The third gap is the income gap between different groups, which is expressed by the International Gini coefficient. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the Gini coefficient of per capita disposable income of national residents will be 0.468 in 2020, and the World Bank database shows it is 0.47. In addition to paying attention to the flow indicator of income Gini coefficient, we should also pay attention to the stock indicator, wealth Gini coefficient. So far, we have not seen the wealth Gini coefficient data released by official authoritative departments. According to the Global Wealth Report 2021, Global Wealth Report 2021, released by Credit Suisse Bank, China's wealth Gini coefficient in 2020 is 0.704. It can be seen that not only China's flow index, income Gini coefficient, is higher than the international warning line of 0.4, but also the stock index, wealth Gini coefficient, is also close to the international empirical tolerance line of about 0.8, which should arouse the concern of decision-making departments and the whole society. Focus on: where is the complexity of the problem? If it's just a large income gap and unfair distribution of wealth, you can focus on this one, but now there is another tendency, populist thought, which has a market in China. For example, after November 2021, some incorrect public opinion about the private economy appeared on the internet. In the field of theory, some scholars have also written articles, using related topics to talk about two destructions, that is, elimination of private ownership and elimination of capitalists, and even quoted the conclusions of the Communist Manifesto out of context, without mentioning the first half of Marx's original words, i.e. preconditions, in this sense, and only one-sidedly quote the second half of the sentence eliminate private ownership. At the time of preparations for the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China, what impact will populist thoughts in society have on the country and the people? This is a reality and deserves to be taken seriously. 2. Theoretical support, argumentative basis for common but differentiated universal prosperity. From a theoretical perspective, what kind of rational formulation should be adopted for the idea of common prosperity? The author's concept is common but differentiated universal prosperity. This is a complete proposition, which includes two aspects: 1. Common prosperity, 2. Universal prosperity with differences. Both aspects are indispensable. It is inaccurate to remove common prosperity or to remove differentiated. In the United Nations document on carbon reduction, there is a formulation of common but differentiated responsibilities, which has been praised by many developing countries. Why? Because it is scientific, accurate, and takes into account the interests of both developed and developing countries. In the face of a very complicated social atmosphere, a rational formulation should be able to prevent both powerful and populist tendencies. The common prosperity in common but differentiated universal wealth aims to prevent the rich and powerful, the latter differentiated aims to prevent populism. Common prosperity is derived from the nature of the socialist system, which has been discussed many times and will not be repeated here. And there are differences can be derived from the natural privilege of socialist labor's individual livelihood and the difference in labor ability. According to Marx's thinking, the logical relationship of this question is 1. Socialist society can only implement distribution according to work. Of course, the reality is very complicated. In addition to distribution according to work, there is also distribution of elements according to contribution, but distribution according to work is still the main method. 2. As long as distribution according to work is practiced, then labor itself has the nature of personal livelihood means, referred to as living nature. 6. The living-making nature of labor is an important characteristic of socialist labor. 3. Since only labor can make a living, according to Marx's thesis in the Critique of the Gotha Program, laborers' unequal personal talents produce unequal working abilities, which is a natural privilege. 4. An important conclusion derived from this natural privilege is that there must be differences in the distribution results resulting from differences in labor capacity. Based on this, the author said in the article looking at common prosperity through the broad development pattern published in early 2022, this kind of material benefit is brought about by the individual earning nature of labor, let alone in the primary stage of socialism, even in the middle and even advanced stages of socialist society still exist. If the participation of non-labor factors is added, the situation is even more complicated. Regarding the participation of non-labor factors, it involves the private economy, and we will discuss it in conjunction with countermeasures. 3 International lessons. Enlightenment from the inspection of transitional countries in South America. Pay attention to the 2 tendencies of the rich and the populist. In 2007, the author made field trips to Bolivia and Chile in Latin America. Bolivia is the place where Guevara, the famous left-wing revolutionary in Latin America, was killed in 1967. Chile is the place where the centralized figure Pinochet launched a military coup to overthrow the democratically elected government of Allende. After on-the-spot investigation, I discovered a very profound social problem. The powerful and the populist in Latin American countries exist at the same time and interact with each other. Therefore, the author expounded the enlightenment of the South American inspection in theory of human-oriented system, and wrote in the article, from the perspective of Latin American countries, the 2 phenomena, the powerful and the populist, are interdependent and viciously interact. The more powerful the higher, the more populist the society, the more populist the society, the more powerful the top, and may even centralize power. 7288. It is from this investigation that the author came up with a theoretical point of view. In the process of transformation, we must pay attention to prevent 2 phenomena. First, we need to marketize the economy, but we must prevent the rich and powerful. Second, we must achieve social justice, but we must prevent populism. 7288. That is to say, the 2 tendencies of power and populism must be excluded. In light of China's actual situation, the book pointed out, whether it is the powerful or the populist, it is not good for the broad masses of the Chinese people. 7288. Today's research on this issue also must see this clearly and maintain a rational understanding. 7288. For historical perspective, both the powerful and the populist hinder social progress. Here we use the histories of several big countries, especially China, as examples to illustrate, both the aristocracy and populism will hinder social progress. For example, Qin Shi Huang's unification of China was progressive, but the long-term feudal autocratic rule was backward. In 1911, the revolution of 1911 overthrew the feudal autocratic system, which was progressive, but after the death of Mr. Sun Yat-sen, there was a state of disunity, warlords fought, and the society was accompanied by some populist trends of thought. Looking at this period of Chinese history, I feel that the relationship between the powerful and the populists is very complicated. Preliminarily sort out 2 of the lines, or duality. The first is the mutualism between the powerful and the populists. The powerful are against the populists, and the populists are against the powerful. Don't think that populism represents public opinion. In fact, populism corrupts public opinion, democracy, and justice. For example, can the Capitol Hill incident in the United States in 2021 represent public opinion? From it, people will see how the rich and powerful manipulate the populists. This duality is worthy of attention, because it involves the next step in the process of building common prosperity, how to deal with the powerful and populist. If variables such as justice and democracy are, the relationship between these factors may become more complicated. Today, while solving the problem of excessive disparity, we must face up to the signs of populist trends, especially to prevent the problem of mutual rivalry and blending between the powerful and populists. 5 countermeasures. What should we do in view of the large gap in income and wealth and the signs of populism? Here are 4 countermeasures. First, we must consider the problem from the perspective of the overall development pattern. We must see that common prosperity is not only a distribution issue, but also an overall and strategic issue of economic and social development. It is recommended to firmly grasp the bull nose of high-quality development, try to mobilize the enthusiasm of the whole society for investment, entrepreneurship, and labor employment, so that all positive factors for the development of productivity and innovation and creativity will burst out. Second, on the basis of the above, study the problem of dividing the cake. It is necessary to effectively promote the reform of the distribution system, including the first, second, and third distribution, and alleviate the problem of the 3 inclinations, that is, inclination to the government, inclination to monopoly enterprises, and inclination to non-work. At the same time, improve the social security system to alleviate the gap in the supply of public services. Third, establish a sound property rights system for environmental resources. Due to factors such as unclear definition of property rights in the field of environmental resources, improper allocation of property rights, unreasonable transaction prices, and imperfect taxation of environmental resources, some people, such as some resource investors, have become rich suddenly, and attention should be paid to this field unfair distribution. This issue has already been discussed in my book Theory of Property Rights in a Broad Sense and will not be elaborated again. Fourth, in response to the signs of populist thought, we should unswervingly adhere to the general direction of the two schemes determined by the central government, that is, seek happiness for the people and rejuvenation for the nation, abolishing private ownership, eliminating capitalists, emerged. The idea of common but differentiated universal affluence can become a reality as long as the two tendencies of excessive disparity and populism can be effectively addressed. 2. On factor-based reforms. 1. Starting from the reinforcement of the market system building. Recently, the state issued the opinions on accelerating the construction of a national unified large market, which aims to build a high-standard market system, but it has aroused heated discussions. The focus is on the word unification. Its biggest drawback is that unification is too much, and unification is too deadly. When you see the word unification, you will be very sensitive and worry about the resurgence of the planned economy. If there are three major elements that make up the building of a market system, what are the three major elements? The author believes that, first, the main body of the market is the foundation. How many market players are there in China now? 160 million. The foundation is very solid and must be well protected. Second, factor markets are steel bars. Although there is a commodity market in the market system, the hardest core thing is the factor market, which is the support of the Chinese market system. Third, the three major mechanisms are cement. The three major mechanisms are the supply and demand mechanism, the price mechanism, and the competition mechanism of the market economy. These three mechanisms run through the entire market system. Since the factor market is a steel bar, the next step should be to pay special attention to the reform of factor market allocation. This paper intends to make a new discussion on the factor-based reform based on the previous research and in combination with the new situation. Note: related discussions can be found in Chang Zio's rediscussion on the reform of the market-oriented allocation of factors, contained in Reform and Strategy No. 9, 2020, discussion on the live theory of production factors of property rights, contained in Property Rights Guide Issue 6, 2020. 2. Three theories of elements: civilization response theory, neutral category theory, and three elements of property rights theory. 1. Civilization response theory on elements. Generally speaking, factors of production are resources that are input into economic processes. The economic process mentioned here, according to the analysis of Marx's Das Kapital, includes the production process, circulation process, distribution process, and overall process. Therefore, specifically, the resources invested in the economic process should include all kinds of resources invested in the process of production, circulation, and distribution of goods and services. So, what resources have been recognized so far in the economic process? It needs to be investigated with a big historical view and a big pattern view. Looking at it from a grand historical perspective, the factors of production are born in response to the luck of human civilization. Compatible with farming civilization, the two elements of labor and land appear first. William Petty, the founder of British classical political economy and former director of land surveying in Ireland, left a famous saying, "Land is the mother of wealth, and labor is the father of wealth." Later, in line with industrial civilization, the capital element was born. The most outstanding contribution of Marx, the author of Das Kapital, is on capital at home and abroad. With the evolution of industrial civilization, the role of knowledge, technology, and management elements has become prominent. Marx put forward the germinal ideas such as science and technology, productive forces, and management is the conductor of the band. After China's reform and opening up, the 15th National Congress of the Communist Party of China added technical elements, the 16th National Congress of the Communist Party of China added management elements. With the outbreak of the information revolution in contemporary society, in response to the wave of digital civilization, data elements have become the latest element. In this way, the 7 elements of labor, land, capital, knowledge, technology, management, and data come on the scene one after another, with succession in time and in line with the development stage of human civilization. From the perspective of the big picture, following the current trend, the above elements not only have succession in time, but also coexist in space. The 7 elements of labor, land, capital, knowledge, technology, management, and data, in their respective domains play a role, each showing their abilities. It should be pointed out that the definition of production factors should be accurate and comprehensive, That is, to establish a comprehensive view of the connotation of factors. For example, land elements are not only ground or surface, but also include all natural resources such as underground mineral resources, above-ground forests, grasslands, rivers, lakes, and space. Capital includes not only physical capital, but also human capital. The author calls it human-oriented element property rights, and if the management elements are subdivided, there is a difference between general management and command management, especially under the condition of intelligence. General management can be attributed to the category of labor elements, command management as decision-making, command and risk-takers belong to the category of entrepreneurial management elements. In short, land elements and capital elements cannot be narrowed, management elements cannot be generalized, and it is better to grasp them appropriately. 2. Neutral category theory about elements. According to the author's research, the 7 contemporary elements can be divided into 3 types according to their types. The 4 elements of labor, knowledge, technology, and management can be attributed to the human element type. Land and capital can be attributed to the material element type. Data elements can be attributed to the human material element mixed type. Whether it is a human-oriented element type, a material-based element type, or a mixed human-object element type, elements are just tools. If you ask what is its name, although there are both labor and capital, it is neither named she nor capital, but belongs to the neutral category. It is like a section of carriages, depending on which locomotive it is hung on. If it is hung on the locomotive of socialism, it will serve socialism. If it is hung on the locomotive of capitalism, it will serve capitalism. Seeking truth from facts is neutral category theory. The focus of the debate now is the so-called profit-seeking nature of capital. For a period of time, the profit-seeking nature of capital has become a hot topic, and the profit-seeking nature of capital has even been regarded as the ugliness of capital. In fact, this lacks rational analysis. According to the laws of the market economy and the nature of capital, capital is indeed profit-seeking. But the author believes that the profit-seeking nature of capital is also a neutral category. The profit-seeking nature itself does not matter ugly or beautiful. The key is, what kind of social conditions are you referring to? Even if it is capital under the same socialist conditions, how does it pursue profit for each specific capital? Who does it pursue profit for? Who does it belong to after pursuing profit? Especially at the current stage when China's pursuit of profit simultaneously triggers capital creates value and the so-called barbaric growth of capital, which aspect is the mainstream? Which side is the tributary? These must be analyzed in detail and cannot be derogated arbitrarily. Let's face it. Take the 2021 Top 500 Private Enterprises in China report as an example. In 2020, the after-tax net profit of 500 private enterprises will be 1.96 trillion yuan, and the total tax payment will reach 1.36 trillion yuan. More than 40 million private enterprises across the country pay more than 50% of their taxes, once exceeded 60%. Let me ask, what is so ugly about the profit-seeking nature of these private enterprise capitals? At the same time, in China, there is not only private capital, but also state-owned capital. Doesn't state-owned capital have a profit-seeking nature? According to the latest data, in the first 4 months of 2022, the total profit, after tax, of state-owned and state-controlled enterprises was 1,282.4 billion yuan, and the total tax revenue was 1,996.7 billion yuan. What's so ugly about the profit-seeking nature of the capital of these state-owned and state-holding enterprises? Of course, under the conditions of a market economy, it cannot be ruled out that some micro-entities do have the problem of unreasonable pursuit of capital by capital among various types of enterprises, and supervision, guidance, and regulation should be strengthened to promote their healthy development. But the tributaries should not be regarded as the mainstream, especially the phrase popular in capitalist society, early stage. Capital came into the world, from head to toe. Every pore is dripping with blood and dirty things 8 move to the scrutiny of capital under today's socialist system. In short, as government decision-makers, entrepreneurs, and theoretical workers, we should correctly understand and grasp the characteristics and laws of behavior of capital, but we should not equate the characteristics and laws of behavior of capital with the nature of the capitalist system and the laws of operation of the capitalist economy. China does need to implement effective supervision of capital in accordance with the law to support and guide the standardized and healthy development of capital. However, The neutral category of capital's profit-seeking nature should not be derogated as a negative economic category. 3 on 3 complete elements of property rights. The report of the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China pointed out, economic system reform must focus on improving the property rights system and market-oriented allocation of factors. Here, the 2 major points of reform in the new stage are clearly put forward. Then, what is the relationship between the market-oriented allocation of factors and the improvement of the property rights system? The author believes that elements and property rights are 2 independent but intersecting concepts. Not all elements have property rights, but all elements have their own property rights. On this basis, the 3 all elements of property rights theory. 1. Horizontal coverage, full coverage. The connotation of property rights includes not only property rights, creditors' rights, and equity that people are familiar with, but also natural resource asset property rights, environmental property rights, and various human element property rights, such as intellectual property rights, technology property rights, labor force property rights, and management property rights. In short, property rights in a broad sense extend to heaven, environmental property rights, such as carbon property rights, to land, various natural resources, land, mines, forests, wind energy, solar energy, etc., intellectual rights, technical rights, management rights, and other human-oriented elements of property rights, thus forming a generalized property rights system theory. Note: related discussions can be found in Chang Zhiou's Theory of Property Rights in a Broad Sense, published by China Economic Publishing House in 2009, Xinhua Digest No. 17, 2011 Xinhua Observation column reprinted in length. 2. Vertical integrity. The whole process is connected. The 4 processes of factor movement run through property rights. Identification and establishment process, definition of property rights of elements, production process of use, property allocation of elements, process of circulation and operation, transaction of property rights of elements, process of consumption, protection of property rights of elements. The report of the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China proposed to improve the property rights system, which to a large extent means improving the property rights definition, property rights allocation, property rights transactions, and property rights protection systems for various elements. Property rights run through it. 3. The whole core, the whole life cycle. In general, property rights are the life of factors of production. Viewed separately, labor rights are the life of labor elements, land rights are the life of land elements, capital rights are the life of capital elements, stocks, bonds, non-standard capital goods, life, number right is the life of data elements, management right is the life of management elements. If property rights are lost, the elements lose their life and become empty shells. Based on the above-mentioned 3 elements of property rights theory, the author draws a conclusion: elements and property rights are a whole with both form and spirit, and the market-oriented allocation of elements is actually the allocation of property rights. 3. The 3 major logics of the marketization of factor allocation: the logic of reform, the logic of economic development, and the logic of human development. 1. The logic of reforming oneself. Second half attack. It has been nearly 44 years since China's reform began in December 1978. After the efforts of the first half, 97% of the commodity market has been liberalized, and the important parts of the government's control of the national economy and people's livelihood account for only 3%. As for the commodity market, it can generally be said that a light boat has passed 10,000 mountains. However, the liberalization of the factor market is relatively slow. First of all, the liberalization of land and capital is not enough. Whether it is the marketization of land or the marketization of interest rates, it is a shortcoming. Secondly, in the field of human factors, whether it is the marketization of knowledge or technology, the marketization of labor, or the marketization of entrepreneurs, is the shortcoming of the shortboard. The chariot of China's reform will inevitably drive in front of the elements. This is the coherence of the logic of reform itself. 2. The logic of economic development. The blocking point is blocked here. From the perspective of development, in recent years, the state has proposed smooth domestic circulation, but some commentators still focus on the free circulation of commodities and the unification of commodity markets in their understanding of this issue. As everyone knows, the key blockage point of China's domestic circulation is blocked in the factor market. Not only the land and capital markets of material elements are in a state of separation, but also the labor market, knowledge and technology market and entrepreneur market as human elements are also in a state of isolation. As for the human object hybrid data market, due to its complexity, it is even less smooth cycle. To resolve structural contradictions, to build industrial chains, supply chains, and value chains, and especially to promote technological innovation, China needs to rely on the rational flow of factors, especially the inherent potential of knowledge, technology, labor, management, land, and capital. The potential inherent in it is enormous. Economic development calls for the marketization of factors and reforms. The logic of human development, necessary for building a modern and powerful country with people. The core of China's reform and development is to promote the all-round development of people, which is the essence of the new system. The report of the 19th National Congress of the Communist Party of China has a very profound sentence: protect the people's personal rights, property rights, and personality rights. The three rights of the people involve a wide range of social aspects: labor rights, which involve laborers; intellectual property rights, which involve intellectuals and researchers; technical property rights, which involve technical engineers, including craftsmen from big countries; management property rights, which involve command managers. As for people, the property rights of mixed data elements also involve citizens' various information rights and privacy. Therefore, today's research on the marketization of factors should have a perspective such as the subtitle of my book, Humanism System Theory, Research on Human Development and its Institutional Arrangement. China is now embarking on the comprehensive construction of a socialist modern power, not only to pursue a modern power of things, but more importantly, a modern power of people. The author believes that China's factor marketization process is a systematic and profound social change. The entry point can start from the field of productivity, but after cutting in, the chariot of reform will drive to the field of production relations, triggering changes in production relations. If it goes deeper, it will inevitably call for changes in the superstructure. This systematic reform of productivity production relations superstructure inevitably requires the promotion of market-oriented reform of human factors. 4. How to advance. The main focus of the market-oriented reform of the allocation of three types of factors. The basic idea is to proceed from reality, push forward reform step by step according to different types. It can be broadly divided into three lines. 1. Human factors, labor, knowledge, and technology, and the main focus of entrepreneurs in managing the market. The first human element is labor, and the market we build can be called a labor market. The highlight is the reform of the household registration system. Since 1958, there has been a dual household registration system in China that separates urban and rural areas. This system is a hindrance to human development and the biggest constraint on labor mobility. The complexity of the problem lies in the fact that China's more than 680 large, medium, and small cities have different situations. Among them, large cities are divided into super large, and general large cities. According to the actual situation, for cities with an urban permanent population of less than 3 million, the settlement restrictions will be completely lifted. For large cities with an urban permanent population of 3 million to 5 million, the settlement requirements will be fully relaxed. Some megacities can adopt the method of accounting for household registration with points. With the reform of the household registration system, the labor force has truly flowed. Another point to watch is the technical evaluation of labor skills, especially the craftsmen from big countries. A vocational skill level system should be established for skilled personnel. Relevant departments have put forward their opinions on improving the occupational skills grading system for skilled talents in the new era, from low to high, establishing a new 8-level system including technicians, senior technicians, special technicians, and chief technicians. It is recommended to carry forward the spirit of reducing talents without sticking to one pattern at the Moganshan Conference in 1984, and truly provide a channel for upward mobility to the bottom laborers. The second and third human elements are knowledge and technology, which are two elements, but can work together when establishing a market. The biggest highlight of the marketization of knowledge and technology is the realization of property rights of service invention achievements of technical talents. This issue remains unresolved. The author once proposed in Generalized Property Rights Theory, 2009 part of the intellectual property rights should be allocated to the technical personnel who specifically created the intellectual property rights. The other part is held by technicians. 9. However, in recent years, several scientific and technological experts have been dealt with due to the issue of property rights of service invention achievements. Now, according to the new trend of reform, the state has decided that part of the results of service inventions should be reserved for the scientific researchers who make service inventions, which can mobilize the enthusiasm and creativity of intellectuals and technicians. The fourth human element is the management element. The entrepreneur manages the market. In 2017, the author pointed out in New Theory of Entrepreneur class that with the development of society and economy, the characteristic connotation of entrepreneurs needs to be redefined, as the commander who establishes the enterprise and assumes the responsibility of operation and management. The enterprise home must have the 3-in-1 characteristics of innovation, sentiment, and compound economic person. This is an important sign of entrepreneurs in the new era. 10. 5 years have passed, and the current problems faced by entrepreneurs and the objective environment are more complicated. Although the relevant document mentions management elements, it does not mention entrepreneurs managing the market, which is a pity. Of course, after careful study, the reasons are more complicated, mainly involving how to determine the state-owned enterprise operators. Suggestions to open up ideas. First, private entrepreneurs other than state-owned enterprises should go to the market. Secondly, even state-owned enterprise operators can establish an entrepreneur-managed market under a large framework under the premise of organization controls qualifications and strict market control, and then the board of directors selects operators from the simulated market. The one-to-one administrative allocation approach is more flexible. From the perspective of the world situation and national strategy, China should cherish entrepreneurs as a scarce element, pay attention to the band conductor ability of this group in reform, opening up, and innovative development, and especially stimulate and protect enterprises. Family spirit is indispensable for entrepreneurs to manage the market. 2 material-based elements, the main focus of land and capital marketization. The land elements, here we mainly talk about ground, and the underground part will be discussed separately, are mainly 3 pieces of land, that is, rural collective construction land, farmland, and homestead. According to the idea of market-oriented reform of factors, the 3 lands should be gradually released. For rural collective construction land, the focus of the reform is to change from the previous government land acquisition and government bidding, auction, and listing to farmers' collective bidding, auction and listing, and farmers directly entering the land market. Agricultural land is mainly to promote the reform of separation of 3 rights. The ownership is collective, the contracting right belongs to the farmers, and the management right of the contracting right can be transferred. The history of homesteads is quite complicated, and now we should promote the separation of 3 rights. The ownership of homesteads is collective, and the right to qualify for homesteads belongs to the residents of the homestead. After the 3 plots market is released, farmers will not only obtain labor income, but also obtain part of the property income from the 3 plots reform, which will greatly help farmers gradually move towards the desired prosperity. Note: for a discussion on this issue, please refer to CAI Jimming, actively promoting the reform of the rural land system on the premise of prudence, China Economic News Network, March 10, 2022. For representative papers on this issue, please see Li Jiangtao, Xiong Chai, and CAI Jimming, Opening a New Milestone in the Reform of Urban and Rural Land Property Rights and Resource Allocation Marketization, published in Management World Issue 6, 2022. As for underground mineral resources, including oil and natural gas resources, they also belong to the category of land in theory. Especially after the Ukraine crisis, the industrial chain and value chain of oil and natural gas resources have attracted more attention from the world. Due to space reasons, it is proposed to be discussed separately. People are familiar with the capital market in the physical element, mainly stocks and bonds. Since the reform and opening up, China's capital market has developed to a certain extent, but there are still many problems, such as the operating mechanism of the securities market is not perfect, the quality of listed companies needs to be improved, the reform of the price mechanism and the competition mechanism has not yet broken the question. Recently, due to the impact of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, the global capital market has undergone great changes and obvious turmoil. The changes in the world pattern and the in-depth marketization of China's economy call for the urgent reform of the marketization of capital elements. In addition to the standard capital market, there is also a non-standard capital market, which is China's property rights market. After more than 30 years of development, China has established more than 200 property rights trading markets. According to the authors on the spot investigation, the current property rights market not only trades capital, but also trades elements such as land and knowledge and technology data. To be precise, It is a non-standard multi-factor market except labor called non-standard total factor market. It deserves attention from all walks of life. 3. Mixed human material elements, the focus of data marketization. Data is a new factor and will also become a new factor market. With the outbreak of the information revolution, the value of data is becoming more and more important. The biggest point of data marketization is the definition of data property rights. First, whose rights are they? Who is the subject? Is it the right of the person being collected, or the person who collects or processes? Second, what right? What is the object? Is it the ownership, use right, operation right or usufruct right of the data? Third, what is the nature of rights? Is it personal rights, personality rights, or property rights? Fourth, how to determine the country's data sovereignty and jurisdiction. A complete set of data property rights definition, configuration, transaction, and protection system should be established. More importantly, the data issue involves two high-voltage lines, the national security high-voltage line and the personal privacy high-voltage line. What to do? Safe and orderly flow must be ensured. Under the premise of national security and personal privacy protection, how does data operate on a dual track, that is, how to provide information and data that are public goods to all members of society in a timely manner. How to transfer or trade the information and data of the nature of private products for a fee. And how to determine the price in the paid transfer or trading system. In short, data may be one of the most complex elements, and there are still many unknown inevitable kingdoms waiting for us to discover and explore. 3. About institutional opening. Here we talk about the opening of the system and use the type of the type, not the nature of the nature. This is after consideration. 1. New stage of opening up, from 5 streams to institutional opening. China's opening up began in 1978. The previous stage focused on the 5 flow opening up, belonging to policy-oriented opening up, namely commodity flow, capital flow, information flow, personnel flow, and technology flow. With the advancement of the opening up of 5 streams, opening up will enter a new realm of institutional opening up. The so-called institutional opening refers to the opening of systems, rules, regulations, etc., respect for international business practices, and interface with international rules. This does not mean that the opening of the 5 streams is over, but that it needs to be upgraded to institutional opening and combined with the opening of the 5 streams. This is a new pursuit in the open field. 2. Frontier of institutional opening up, superposition of free trade ports and RCEP. The frontier of China's institutional opening is Hainan. In April 2018, the state decided that Hainan would build a free trade port on the basis of the free trade zone. If the open gradient is regarded as a pyramid, the free trade port is undoubtedly at the top of the tower. At the same time, starting from January 2022, RCEP will also come into effect. In the Hainan Free Trade Port, there is a question of seeking the superimposed effect of the Free Trade Port and RCEP. Regarding the superposition effect, the author has done an analysis at the Hainan Free Trade Port and RCEP seminar on March 6, 2020, so I won't go into details here. Institutional opening is more high-end than the opening of goods and funds. RCEP will take effect in January 2022, and before that, September 16, 2021, the Chinese government has formally applied to join the CPTPP. After reading the text of CPTPP, the author feels that it is more advanced than the original WTO, and has a more profound impact on China's institutional opening. The question now is, after the government submits an application, should it wait passively, or take the initiative and make active preparations? The author suggests that we should take the initiative and make active preparations. We should now consider the impact on China after joining the CPTPP and the corresponding reform issues. 3. Institutional openness, the dual drivers of China's reform power system. From the study of the power system of China's reform, China's system reform mainly relies on endogenous power. Who made the big contract in the countryside back then? None other than the peasants themselves. Endogenous driving force is the first driving force of China's reform. At the same time, taking the establishment of Shenzhen and other special zones and the development of Pudong as practical steps, especially marked by China's accession to the WTO in 2001, added reverse external thrust. WTO rules are essentially the basic operating rules of the market economy. In accordance with its WTO accession commitments and its rules, China has amended more than 3,000 laws and regulations, brought out a series of vigorous reform measures, and formed China's first wave of opening up and reform. 12 years later, starting from August 2013, China decided to set up free trade zones in Shanghai and other places. Currently there are 21 in the country, which is a higher level of China's opening strategy. From the perspective of the reform mechanism, the free trade port, as an independent opening, not only has independent endogenous power, but also places hope on reverse external force. This is not only about Hainan's reforms, but also about China's second wave of opening up and forcing reforms. In the 4 years since the Hainan Free Trade Port was proposed, a lot of progress has been made, especially the Hainan Free Trade Port Law of the People's Republic of China passed by the National People's Congress on June 10, 2021, which has implemented a series of measures that open up and force reform into law and institutional level. In this context, the RCEP agreement has come into effect, especially since the Chinese government has formally proposed to join the CPTPP, which is very severe in forcing reforms. Therefore, from the perspective of the overall pattern of reform, it is necessary to continue to exert the endogenous driving force of reform, and learn to use the external force of opening up to force reform. Will this trigger China's third wave of opening up and reform? Can be observed. 4. What reforms will institutional opening up force China to do? What kind of reform will such an institutional opening up force? This is the content to be identified in the study of institutional opening. The text of CPTPP has a total of 30 chapters, involving investment and other 6 fields, and it has formulated brand new rules on some new fields and issues. Look at the clauses, connect with China's reality, and highlight the 5 issues involved. 1. State-owned enterprise reform issues. Why should this issue be taken seriously? Because CPTPP has formulated some new rules for state-owned enterprises, such as strengthening information transparency, providing information such as the degree of non-commercial support for enterprises. Non-commercial support provided by the government to state-owned enterprises must not harm the interests of other members and their industries. The so-called non-commercial aid is mainly aimed at subsidies to state-owned enterprises. Compared with the WTO's agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures, its rules have a wider scope of constraints. At the same time, the government maintains non-discrimination and neutrality in enterprise supervision. This requires speeding up the reform of existing state-owned enterprises, especially the mixed ownership reform of state-owned enterprises in old industrial bases such as Northeast China. Note: related discussions can be found in Chang Zai's Reviewing the Influence and Development Prospect of RCEP from 3 Major Patterns, published in Liaoning Economics No. 2, 2022. For the discussion of the specific reform plan, please refer to my book General Theory of Northeast China's Transformation, published by Liaoning People's Publishing House in 2021. 2. Market access, fair competition, and hidden barriers. CPTPP requires standardizing the conditions and means of competition, reducing market barriers, and enabling member companies to compete on an equal footing. There is still a relatively complicated administrative approval process, and some foreign-funded enterprises have reported problems in the business environment. In the next step, a good business environment, including an international business environment, should be created in accordance with the principle of competitive neutrality. 3. Protection of intellectual property rights. CPTPP's regulations on intellectual property rights greatly exceed the scope and level of WTO's agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, such as expand the scope of intellectual property protection, extend the term of intellectual property protection, copyright to the life of the author plus at least 70 years after death or 70 years after the first edition of the work is published. The protection of intellectual property rights should be strengthened, especially domestic and foreign countries should be treated equally. 4. Labor rights issues. CPTPP requires compliance with the basic labor rights established by the International Labour Organization, ILO, elimination of forced labor, abolition of child labor, etc., requires minimum wages, working hours, occupational health, and safety regulations to be placed under legal supervision. For this, fundamental labor rights must be guaranteed. It is also necessary to pay attention to the research on how to implement the protection of labor rights and interests under the conditions of the internet-based ternary form of labor and employment, so that various employment forms can establish and improve the corresponding labor rights protection mechanism. 5. Environmental protection and other corporate social responsibilities. There are many aspects of corporate social responsibility, the most prominent of which is environmental protection. How to protect the environment and promote green development. There are 4 routes. 1. Technical route. 2. Structural route. 3. Government regulation route. 4. Property rights mechanism route, that is, the use of environmental property rights theory to define, trade and protect carbon property rights, which is now the weakest is the property line. It is suggested to get out of the one-dimensional government coercion model, and make more use of the market route of the property rights mechanism to reduce carbon, so as to better promote environmental protection and green development. The author has systematically elaborated in the article Theory of Generalized Property Rights, the exploration of establishing a community with a shared future for heaven, earth, and man, which can be used for reference. Note: 3 kinds of labor forms referred to. 1. Those that meet the conditions of labor relations, employees, and shall be adjusted according to the labor law, how to innovate the system outside the labor law and civil law. 3. Relying on the platform for self-management and freelance work, adjusted by the civil law. According to relevant information, there are 200 million flexible employees, and the task of protecting labor rights is very heavy. For specific discussions, please refer to Chang Zio's Theory of Generalized Property Rights, the exploration of establishing a community with a shared future for heaven, earth, and man, published in Journal of Shanghai University, Social Science Edition, Issue 3, 2020. In short, development should focus on people's wealth, reform should focus on factors, and opening up should focus on institutions. This is a rational choice that conforms to the current world trend and its game. The author uses this 3-type trend theory to teach in academia.